I bought this vintage dress back in 2019 for an event and I didn't end up wearing it. But I kept it because I like it. However, I do not wear it. I have never worn it actually outside. So let's look at what I can do to be able to wear it. The dress is composed of this pretty pleated skirt with a shirt. And the issue that I have with the dress is that the waist, so where the shirt and the skirts are attached, just does not hit where my natural waist sits. So my natural waist is about here, and then the seam is way down there. And perhaps that's the style of the dress and that's how it is meant to be worn, but I just don't find it personally flattering on me. And even when I push up to have a little bit of a hang, it just doesn't stay there. It will just naturally fall off. So to be able to wear it, I did think about having separated into two pieces. So the skirt, separate the skirt from the shirt, but I do still like them kind of like together. So then the only other solution kind of like left would be to change that seam to be better sitting where my waist is at. So I will start by seam ripping the two pieces together. I will remove about perhaps an inch, we'll see once it's seam ripped, from the shirt, and then I will reattach the skirt to the shirt to create a new waistline more aligned where my natural waist is. And I think I will add an elastic as well for it to anchor it a bit more. So yeah, that's the plan. This is how it looks from the back as well. And it is, according to the vintage store, an 80s stripes dress that is made in France. I will show you the tag shortly. This is the dress inside out, and this is the tag. Let me know if you know this brand. I didn't look it up. So it's Marcolas Paris, made in France. And it is 100% polyester, to be washed, hand washed. Zineb editing here. I did find a company named Marcolas on the database, the French database for companies. And this company was in the fabrication of clothes for women and girls. So it was created in December 25th, 1958, so 68 years ago. It doesn't provide a date for when the company itself was closed, but it does look inactive. There were two locations linked to it, and those locations were closed in 1992 and 1993, so about over 30 years ago. The dress inside still looks in a very good condition, and I haven't worn it personally, like I said, at all. So looking at the seam that attached the top to the skirt, you can see here there is some seam that is already coming off, so it's being ripped. It looks like the skirt itself, yeah, they are being serged here, and then there are two seam lines that are going, attaching the skirt to the shirt. So I will take the time to seam rip all of this prior to, well, in order to separate them, and then reassess in terms of cutting the 1 inch perhaps that I want from then, and then reattaching them. So it should be a pretty simple alteration, but it will just take the time to seam rip all of this. It's a good time to put on a show or listen to a podcast and do that. And then the rest should be pretty straightforward. I finished seam ripping the first layer. Here you can see. So the right sides. Okay, I'll show you on the table. It will be much easier. I finished seam ripping one of the seams layers. So this is the front, this is how it was attached, and I seam ripped this. Before removing this other seam, I will just run a basting stitch on the skirt. I'm just scared that if I go on and seam rip the other one, like all the pleats will be, I mean, it's heat pleated or something like that, so I don't think the pleats will be removed, but it's easier to maintain them while attached than the other way around. And the other thing is that we'll see once I seam rip it, but I'm pretty sure now I feel it that there is actually an elastic here. It's just that it's not as elasticy, or maybe it lost some of its bounciness. So we'll confirm that once everything is seam ripped. I base stitched the skirt in place. So now I will start seam ripping the other seam to fully separate the two. While I'm continuing doing that, I wanted to ask you if you have any personal opinion about altering or even flipping vintage clothes. I don't have that many vintage clothes. I have a couple that I like and I do wear. But yeah, for this one, I was not wearing it, and even though I still liked it. So I think, to give it another life and to be able to use it and wear it, I don't see any issue with that. But I do know that some people are very, what's the word? Can I say strict? Or have strong, opinion about altering vintage. And I guess this will also depend on how vintage it is. Like I said, this, according to the vintage shop, it says in the 80s. Obviously, you can find clothes that are much, much older than that. But yeah, so between the alternative of just like letting go of it and potentially for it not to be bought and just ended up in the landfill, I think, changing it to something that you are more likely to wear and to use, that's the better option in my opinion. But yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think about. So yeah, let me know down below. For now, I'll relax again and try to get the seam allowances and the surgeon as well off. And yes, here it is. So there is an elastic, but which makes sense because honestly it will be much harder to put in and on. But I didn't felt that there was like basically an elastic at all. So it will be a good thing to change it. I finished seam ripping, so I have the two pieces here. This is the skirt and this is the top. I did found notches on the top here, but I don't know what they are for. There are no notches on the skirt, so yeah, and they don't look like they are for like where to join the placket, which is something that I will need to take note of since I'll be cutting this. I will try it on before to figure out how much to cut. And so for the assembly, how they did assemble it from what I can figure out is that they attach this right sides together, so the top and the skirt in this seam, and then afterward they top stitched from the outside here the seam that was here, and then they left an opening where they encased the elastic. This was the elastic that was inside. I unfortunately will not be able to do it that way, the top stitching, because I don't have a thread that matches. They did it with the green brownish color, and everything outside is kind of like top stitch with that color, so I can't opt to do it with the white thread. So I'll need to figure out a better way to, or not a better way, but another way rather, to have to put the elastic on. But for now, I'll just go try the top and figure out how much I want to cut, and then I'll iron it to make sure, you know, that I'm cutting everything straight, remove these lingering threads, and then we'll attach them both together. My natural waist is about here, and it's kind of like it's aligned a little bit with the button, but I don't want to cut the button. I will cut just below it. So I think if the seam ends just about 1/2 inch below the button, that will be good, and then I will leave a 5/8 inch seam allowance to attach the skirt to it. So now I'll just remove it and then measure. Well, I iron it first and measure how much I need to remove. And then I'll have to figure out how to add the elastic. I have an idea to reuse the leftover fabric we will be cutting. Today I ironed the shirt, and then I sewed in place the placket. So when I will cut the section that I want to remove, it stays in place as is. At the beginning, I did it on the line where I will be cutting that I measured, but then I just did it a little bit further up. So within the seam allowance anyway, we're not gonna see it once I attach the skirt. So now I just need to measure this distance all across. It is about 3 1/4 inches, and then cut it, and that will be the piece to be removed from the top. My idea for adding the elastic will be to use this piece as a casing inside. So by attaching, or while attaching the shirt with the skirt, I will attach this piece as well, kind of like wrong side to right side together with the skirt. And then once everything is sewn together, I will then flip this. It will be easier to show you once I do it, but I will basically flip it once and then iron it all along. I will need, since I can't top stitch, I will need to hand stitch it and then leave an opening where I will put the elastic. So put the elastic all around and then just finish that opening as well with hand sewing. So that way I will not need to top stitch anything to the front, and I will still have an elastic. Technically, I can just add an elastic to the seam while, you know, you're sewing the skirt as well. But I want to try it this way, and that way we can use everything or most of the things that I have cut as well. So let's see how would that work. I will remove here. This is where the placket was attached, so I will just unstitch that. You can see that the placket was interfaced as well in both sides. So, and it's already finished, so I will use the edges as well, and I will cut it. I will use a 1/4 inch zipper, no, not zipper, a 1/4 inch elastic as they had as well, so I don't need much of it either. So I will cut it about maybe an inch wide, and then attach it at the same time as the skirt, as I'm attaching the skirt to the shirt. I'll show you. It will be probably much easier to see it than to hear me talk about it. I said I will measure 1 inch, but that's incorrect because I'm not taking into consideration the seam allowance. So while attaching the skirt to the shirt, so that's 5/8 of an inch, and then a 1/4. Anyway, I will do the math and I will cut that the width of the casing to that measurement. Attaching the shirt to the skirt, so I'll have my shirt like this, and I'll flip the skirt. Oh, it's already flipped to be right sides together, to be wrong side out. And I couldn't figure out if there was like a front and a back to the skirt. I don't think so. It looks like it's the same. There is no indication. I even checked to see, you know, usually myself, I would always iron the seams if I iron them together towards the back, so both sides. But here, like, this side is towards one side and this one is toward the other side, so there isn't really a way to say, so I'm just gonna assume that they're the same. So I'll take the shirt and I will put it inside the skirt, and I will attach side seams together. These ones are open. To just make sure that the placket is at the center, I'm just going to measure the center of each one of them. So the center of the front, like this, and I will add the pin. And I will do the same thing for the skirt. So side seams together, and then identify the center here. And I do know that the skirt is less wide than the shirt, so which means that I will need to ease in the shirt. I might have some gathers, because even before I seam drape it, there were some gathering at the shirt. So yeah, you can see here. Should I then? You know what? I will do some basting stitches. I think it will be much easier to fit it in than the other way around. So yeah, let's do that. I'll do 2 basting stitches for the back, so the same, and then here I will measure the center and I will do 2 separate lines so that I can gather each side separately. So like this. So this is my center front, I'm just gonna this time take a notch to it. So this is my center. Okay, so I'll go do the basting stitches and I'll be back. So I sewed 2 basting stitches rows for the back, and then same thing as the front. It's just that the front I started from the middle and yeah, stopped at the side seam so that it will be easier to gather it that way, while respecting that the center of the shirt is laying with the center of the skirt. So now that the front is attached, so at the center front and then the side seam, I will use my gathering stitches for the shirt to gather and to fit the space of the skirt. The shirt and the skirt are attached together, and I have gathered the shirt as I've shown to attach it to the skirt. So just because there are so many things going on, I'm just gonna baste it again. I'm gonna baste them together within the seam allowances before I'll show you how I will attach this strip where the elastic will go through. The skirt and the shirt are baste stitched together for now, so let's see how it looks from the front. Not that it's gonna give us a big idea, but this is how it's looking. So just a little bit of gathering in terms of the shirt. Okay, so let's talk about the, what is it called? Why do I keep forgetting what is it called? Oh my goodness. The elastic. So for the elastic, this is the skirt. So my idea is that I will take this. So I ended up cutting it 2-inch width, and I will start probably like from the side seam. So I will pin it, and then it's now when I will sew the actual seam allowance, which is the 5/8 of an inch, to attach the shirt that we have here and then the skirt. And at the same time, I'm attaching this strip of fabric all along. I will pin it first. And then once that's attached, so let's assume it is attached by a pin here, I will then iron this one, this edge. I will iron it. We'll see if I will need to clip it. And then I will have it like sit this way. So I will iron this, and then I was thinking of like attaching it to, maybe I will just sew it this way. Wait a second. Now thinking about it, I can't really hand sew it and take like basically from the shirt, because it will be seen, even though I will do a blind stitch, just because this fabric is very thin. So I guess I can just still do that, and then I will hand stitch it. Well, technically I don't even need to hand stitch it. I can just sew it against the surgeon seam allowances that I will have here. Yeah, maybe that will be it. Technically, before I was thinking that I can like blind slip it with the front So we will have the edge this way. I can still try it. So this will stay kind of like flat, and it will even hide the edge here. So the edge of the skirt being attached to the shirt. But now that I am talking and seeing it, visualizing it, I think that it will not be the easiest to not see, like basically with the blind stitch what I will be picking from the front. I think it will still be visible. So perhaps then I will just do it so this will be kind of like flippy, because we can just attach it at the side seam. Anyway, something like that. So let me pin it, we'll sew it, and then we'll see. Here I will overlap these two, and I started with the edge that is finished, so the edge that is unfinished will be inside. Okay, so now I'll just go and sew all of this 5/8 of an inch all around. I sewed the shirt and the skirt together, including that strip of fabric where the elastic will be encased. And then I removed the basting stitches and I serged both the seam allowance that attached the skirt and the shirt, as well as the edge of that strip of fabric. So now I will basically just simply take it. It's almost like it's going to be a bias tape, and I will flip it, the strip of fabric, and then I will sew it on that seam allowance, and I will leave an opening where I will insert the elastic. And then once I do that, I perhaps will just hand by hand, I will kind of like anchor it up to the side seam allowance for it to stay up. Like I said, ideally, if this was a thicker fabric, I will blind stitch it by hand all along. But I don't think it's gonna really work for this, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able, you'll be able to see even if they are tiny hang stitches. So I think that's the best option that I have with including the elastic. So just a couple of steps, basically only that is left, and then we'll be done. I have not tried it on, so we'll see. I'll wait to do the elastic, and then I'll try it on. After stitching this is how it looks from the inside. So it's just the seam that is kind of like enclosed in that strip of fabric. So I left an opening here through which I will insert the elastic. I'm using a new elastic, and I measured around my waist, and that's pretty much it. It's just making sure that it's kind of like comfortable around my waist. And I will use a safety pin that I had here somewhere to put the elastic inside. Once I only have a little bit left, I will pin it in place so that I would not lose it, and I will be able to attach the other end once it comes through. I'll go attach these two edges now together. Just sew with the zigzag stitch to attach them. I closed the opening that was left to insert the elastic, and now just not to have this seam allowance kind of like flapping inside, I will just slip stitch it by hand here in the, because we will not be able to see it with the placket, so the placket as well as the side seam, and that will hopefully kind of like keep it up. It's quite thick, because not only of the elastic but the seam allowance, and the skirt is pleated, and perhaps that's why the reason that the elastic was technically inserted in the shirt rather than the skirt, but yeah, it is what it is. So that will be then the last step, and then I can compare and see if it turned out how I hoped it would or not. These are the only scraps left from the project. I'll probably keep them in case I need them for additional reparation or whatnot for the dress. The alteration of this 80s dress is complete. So this is how it's looking. I will insert a video or a picture of the before. So I do think it is much more wearable for me this way than it was before. I am just a little bit sad that I have cut too much fabric. I think that I no longer have that kind of like overhang of the shirt, where the skirt and the shirt are pretty much the same layer. But aside from that, the other actually element is that I did eventually, of course, lose a little bit of the length. But yeah, aside from that, I think it's just more wearable for me on day-to-day basis. Yeah, let me know, what do you think? Did you prefer the before or the after, or they are both kind of like look alike? I'm excited to have an additional dress in my wardrobe, and I am working on another dress, so hopefully I'll be able to finish the video soon and share it with you. Let me know down below if you have any comment, and see you next time.